Admiral Lisa Chen stood at the head of the emergency council table, watching the faces of Earth's most powerful leaders as Captain Jake Morrison finished his report. The room was silent except for the soft hum of the air recycling systems and the distant sound of traffic from the city below. What Jake had told them seemed impossible, but the evidence was right there on the displays around the room. The data crystal from Veltar contained star charts showing the locations of dozens of dead civilizations and technical information about the harvesters that made Earth's best scientists look like children playing with toys. Dr. Maya Rodriguez had spent 3 days analyzing the alien data, and her conclusions were terrifying. The harvesters were machines older than human civilization with technology that could destroy entire star systems. General Marcus Stone leaned forward and asked Jake to explain again what had happened to the alien ship they had found. Jake repeated the story of Veltar's warning about the 50,000-year cycle and how the harvesters woke up whenever organic life became too advanced. The general's face was grim as he realized what this meant for humanity. Maya activated a holographic display showing the harvester fleet movements based on Veltar's data. The ancient machines were working their way through the galaxy in a systematic pattern, destroying every planet that showed signs of advanced civilization. At their current rate of movement, they would reach human space within 6 months. Communications officer Sam Parker was monitoring deep space sensor networks when the first reports started coming in. The automated monitoring stations at the edge of human territory were detecting unknown ships moving toward the colonies. The vessels matched the energy signatures that the Discovery had recorded from the harvester fleet. Admiral Chen ordered all military forces to high alert, while the Council debated what to do next. Some members wanted to try diplomatic contact with the harvesters while others argued for immediate military mobilization. Maya explained that according to Veltar's data, the harvesters did not communicate with organic life forms and viewed all biological entities as contamination to be removed. The first human colony to encounter the harvesters was New Boston on Kepler 442b. The planet had 50 million inhabitants and was one of humanity's most successful settlements. The harvester fleet arrived without warning and began their attack immediately. The colonial defense forces tried to fight back, but their weapons had no effect on the alien ships. Sam Parker was in the communications center when the final transmission came through from New Boston. The signal was breaking up due to atmospheric interference, but the message was clear. The harvesters were destroying everything on the planet's surface with energy beams that turned cities into glass and metal into vapor. 50 million people died in less than 6 hours. The loss of New Boston sent shockwaves through human space. Admiral Chen authorized the deployment of the entire Earth Defense Fleet to protect the remaining colonies, while General Stone began mobilizing ground forces. Everyone knew that conventional weapons would be useless against the harvesters, but they had to try something. Maya worked around the clock studying the harvester technology with teams of scientists and engineers. The alien machines used energy manipulation techniques that human science could barely understand. Their ships seemed to exist partially outside normal space-time, which made them nearly impossible to target with conventional weapons. The second battle came at Europa Station, where Commander Rachel Torres led a fleet of 30 ships against 5 harvester vessels. The human fleet used every weapon in their arsenal, but the results were the same as at New Boston. The harvester ships absorbed energy weapons and deflected physical projectiles, while their own weapons cut through human shields, like they were made of paper. Rachel barely escaped with 3 damaged ships after watching 27 vessels and their crews die in the space of an hour. Her report to Admiral Chen was devastating. The harvesters fought with perfect coordination, and their technology was thousands of years ahead of anything humanity possessed. Conventional military tactics were completely useless against them. Jake was given command of a new ship called the UES Vengeance and tasked with developing new strategies to fight the harvesters. He worked with Maya and a team of the military's best tactical minds to find some weakness in the alien technology. The data from Veltar suggested that previous civilizations had tried everything from nuclear weapons to antimatter bombs with no success. Dr. Elena Vasquez joined the research team after studying the psychological profiles of the harvester attacks. The machines showed no emotion or creativity in their tactics. They followed the same patterns that had worked for 50,000 years, because they had never encountered resistance that could adapt faster than they could respond. The Harvesters continued their advance through human space, destroying colony after colony. Each attack followed the same pattern, with orbital bombardment, followed by ground forces that eliminated any survivors. The alien machines seemed determined to remove every trace of human civilization from the galaxy. Maya made a breakthrough when she discovered that the Harvesters had one limitation. Their technology was based on pure logic and mathematical precision. They could not understand or predict behavior that was based on emotion or intuition. This gave her an idea that might provide humanity with its first real advantage. General Stone organized the evacuation of the outer colonies while Admiral Chen prepared Earth's defenses. The planet had orbital weapons platforms and shield generators, but everyone knew they would not be enough if the Harvesters decided to attack the human homeworld directly. Sam Parker intercepted Harvester communications during one of their attacks and made a disturbing discovery. The machines were not just destroying human settlements, they were studying human technology and tactics with each battle. The Harvesters were learning from their encounters and adapting their strategies to be more efficient. Jake took the vengeance on a series of hit-and-run attacks against isolated Harvester ships trying to gather intelligence about their capabilities. The missions were dangerous, and several times they barely escaped destruction, but each encounter provided valuable data about Harvester weaknesses. Maya realized that the key to fighting the Harvesters might not be better weapons or stronger shields. The alien machines expected organic life forms to follow predictable patterns based on survival instincts and logical thinking. But humans were different from other species in ways that might matter in a fight for survival. Dr. Vasquez studied historical examples of human behavior under extreme stress and found patterns that did not exist in other known alien species. Humans had a unique ability to channel emotion into focused action and to make creative leaps that defied logical analysis. This might be the edge that humanity needed. The research team began developing new technologies based on human psychological responses rather than pure engineering principles. They created weapons that required emotional input to function, and defense systems that adapted based on the operator's instinctive reactions rather than programmed responses. Admiral Chen authorized the construction of new ships designed around these human-centric technologies. The vessels would be smaller and less heavily armed than traditional warships, but they would be crewed by humans whose emotional responses were integrated into the ship's control systems. Jake volunteered to test the first prototype during a mission to rescue survivors from a recently attacked colony. The ship's systems felt different from anything he had experienced before. Instead of cold mechanical responses, the controls seemed to react to his thoughts and feelings in ways that were both strange and natural. The test mission was a success. Jake's ship was able to evade Harvester patrols using maneuvers that no computer could have calculated. The human crew's ability to make split-second decisions based on intuition rather than logic allowed them to rescue 300 colonists from certain death. Maya presented her findings to the Emergency Council, showing how human emotional responses could be weaponized against the Harvesters. The alien machines were programmed to fight logical opponents who would make predictable choices based on mathematical analysis. They had no protocols for dealing with enemies who made decisions based on anger, hope, or desperation. The Council approved the development of a new fleet built around human psychological advantages. Ships would be designed to amplify the crew's emotional responses and channel those feelings into enhanced performance. Weapons would be powered by human determination, and shields would strengthen based on the crew's will to survive. General Stone began recruiting volunteers for the new fleet, with an emphasis on individuals who had lost family or friends to the Harvester attacks. These people carried anger and grief that could be transformed into focused determination to fight back against the machines that had taken everything from them. The Harvesters continued their systematic destruction of human colonies, but they were about to encounter something new. Humanity was preparing to fight back with weapons powered by rage and tactics based on emotions that no machine could understand or predict. The galaxy's oldest killers were about to learn what happened when they threatened a species that refused to accept extinction. Dr. Maya Rodriguez stared at the brain scan displays in her laboratory, trying to understand what she was seeing. The human volunteers who had lost family members to the harvester attacks were showing neurochemical patterns that had never been documented before. Under extreme stress and grief, their minds were producing combinations of hormones and neurotransmitters that created entirely new forms of mental processing. Engineer Danny Walsh worked in the weapons development lab, where he had been trying to reverse engineer harvester technology for weeks with no success. The alien machines used principles that seemed to violate the laws of physics as humans understood them. But when Danny stopped trying to think logically and let his anger over his brother's death guide his work, something unexpected happened. The breakthrough came when Danny was so frustrated that he started hitting the harvester device with a wrench. Instead of breaking, the alien technology began to respond to his emotional state. The device started glowing and emitting energy patterns that matched the readings Maya had detected in the brain scans of grieving humans. Pilot Sarah Kim was testing the new emotion-responsive flight controls when she discovered something amazing. The ship's systems could predict her movements before she made them by reading her emotional state and anticipating her reactions. When she felt angry, the engines produced more power, and when she felt determined, the maneuverability systems became more responsive. Dr. Elena Vasquez was studying the psychological profiles of harvester attacks when she made a connection that changed everything. The alien machines always won their battles in the same amount of time regardless of the resistance they faced. This suggested that they were not actually superior fighters but simply had never encountered enemies who could adapt faster than their programming allowed. The first test of human rage-based technology came when the harvesters attacked the Mars research station. Dr. Kevin Brown was the station director, and he refused evacuation orders because his daughter had been killed at New Boston. Instead of running, Kevin decided to turn the station's particle accelerator into a weapon powered by his grief and anger. Kevin had no training in weapons design, but his rage gave him insights that no textbook could provide. He modified the accelerator to channel his emotional energy into the particle beam, creating something that had never existed before. When the harvester ships arrived, Kevin fired his improvised weapon and watched in amazement as it cut through their shields like they were made of tissue paper. The energy field that Kevin created did more than just damage the harvester ships. It seemed to feed on their weapons fire, becoming stronger each time they shot at it. The alien machines found themselves facing a defensive system that turned their own power against them in ways their programming had never anticipated. News of the Mars station victory spread through human space faster than the official military reports. People who had been preparing to die suddenly realized that the harvesters could be hurt. More importantly, they learned that human emotions could be turned into actual weapons that worked better than any technology Earth's engineers had ever built. Maya discovered that the key was not just feeling angry or determined, but learning to focus those emotions with precision. Humans who could channel their rage into specific tasks became capable of feats that should have been impossible. Their reflexes became faster, their thinking became clearer, and their ability to solve problems increased dramatically. Captain Jake Morrison took command of the newly completed UES Vengeance, which was the first ship built entirely around rage-based technology. Every system on the vessel required emotional input from the crew to function properly. The weapons were powered by anger, the shields were strengthened by determination, and the engines responded to the pilot's will to survive. Engineer Tim Rodriguez had lost his entire family when the harvesters destroyed the colony on Tau Ceti. His grief was so intense that it affected the ship's systems even when he was not directly operating them. The Vengeance became faster and more maneuverable when Tim was on duty because his emotional state enhanced the performance of every component. Dr. Angela Foster developed what she called empathy bombs after studying the harvesters' logical programming. The weapons were designed to force the alien machines to experience the emotional trauma of their victims. When a harvester ship was hit by an empathy bomb, its systems became overloaded trying to process feelings that its programming could not understand. The first major engagement using rage-based tactics came when Captain Lucy Evans led a squadron of new ships against a harvester fleet near the Centauri system. Her pilots had all lost friends or family to the aliens, and their combined anger created an energy field that enhanced their ship's capabilities beyond anything the designers had imagined possible. Lucy's squadron attacked the Harvester fleet using maneuvers that no computer could have calculated. The human pilots made split-second decisions based on instinct and emotion, while their ships responded by becoming faster and deadlier. The Harvesters found themselves fighting enemies who broke every rule of logical combat behavior. Commander, Ryan Mitchell discovered that Harvester ships always followed predictable attack patterns because they had never needed to adapt their tactics. His strategy was to use human unpredictability to confuse the alien machines and force them into situations where their programming provided no guidance for proper responses. The tide of the war began to turn as more human ships were equipped with rage-based technology. Harvester fleets that had been unstoppable suddenly found themselves facing enemies who became stronger when they were hurt and more dangerous when they were desperate. The alien machines had no protocols for dealing with such behavior. Maya realized that humanity's gift was not just the ability to feel strong emotions, but the capacity to transform those feelings into constructive action. Where other species might be paralyzed by grief or fear, humans use those same emotions as fuel for innovation and determination. This was something that the Harvesters had never encountered in 50,000 years of galactic cleansing. The psychological changes in human crews were remarkable. People who had been broken by loss discovered that their pain could be channeled into purpose. Veterans who had suffered from trauma found that their experiences gave them insights into Harvester weaknesses that no amount of technical training could provide. Dr. Vasquez documented cases of humans performing impossible feats when their emotional state reached certain thresholds. Pilots who should have been killed in crashes walked away uninjured. Engineers solved technical problems that had baffled entire teams of scientists. Soldiers survived battles that should have been suicide missions. The Harvesters began adapting their tactics to account for human unpredictability, but their changes were too slow and too logical. Human crews learned to read the aliens' behavioral patterns and stay ahead of their adaptations by making decisions that defied mathematical analysis. Jake led the Vengeance on a series of deep strike missions against Harvester construction facilities. The ship's rage-enhanced systems allowed it to penetrate defenses that had protected the alien machines for millennia. Each successful mission provided intelligence about Harvester technology and weaknesses that could be exploited. The war was far from over, but humanity had discovered something that gave them hope. Their capacity for emotion was not a weakness, but a strength that could be weaponized against enemies who understood only logic and mathematics. The Harvesters had awakened something in the human species that had been dormant until the moment their survival was threatened. Maya's research showed that the neurochemical changes in human brains were becoming permanent. The people who fought the Harvesters were evolving into something new while still remaining recognizably human. They were becoming a species designed for war against machines that had ruled the galaxy for longer than recorded history. The galaxy's other surviving species watched in amazement as humans did what no previous civilization had managed. They were not just surviving the Harvester cycle, but actually pushing the ancient machines back. The Zephyrians and other alien refugees began to hope that this time the cycle might be broken forever. Engineer Katie's sacrifice at the beginning of the war had shown the Harvesters that humans would die to protect others. Now her example was being followed by thousands of people who discovered that their willingness to sacrifice everything could be turned into a weapon more powerful than any technology the galaxy had ever seen. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Discovery watching the empty space ahead through the main display screen. The ship had been traveling for 3 weeks now into the unknown regions beyond human space. His crew was good and they trusted him. But even Jake felt uneasy about what they might find out here in the dark between stars. Dr. Maya Rodriguez looked up from her science station with worry in her eyes. She had been scanning the star system they were approaching for the past hour, and the readings made no sense. There should be planets here, and signs of the civilization that once lived on them. But her instruments showed only dead rocks floating in space. Lieutenant Alex Carter checked his security displays one more time. Everything seemed normal, but something felt wrong about this whole mission. The brass back on Earth had sent them out here because of some strange signals picked up by the deep space monitoring stations. Now they were finding empty systems where there should be thriving worlds. Engineer Katie Sullivan worked at her station, keeping the ship running smooth. She had served with Jake for 5 years and knew him well enough to see he was worried. The Discovery was a good ship, but they were far from home now, and if something went wrong, they would be on their own. Jake turned to Maya and asked what she was seeing on her scans. Maya shook her head and told him the readings were all wrong. According to her instruments, there had been a civilization here once. She could detect the remains of orbital stations and what looked like the wreckage of cities on the planets below, but everything was dead and had been dead for a very long time. The Discovery moved deeper into the system and Maya's readings got worse. The planets showed signs of massive destruction. Something had hit them hard and destroyed everything that lived there. The weapon signatures were unlike anything in human databases. Whatever had done this was using technology far beyond what humans or any known alien species possessed. Alex pulled up tactical displays showing the debris fields they were passing through. Pieces of metal and crystal floated in space around them. Some of the fragments were clearly parts of spaceships, but the designs were alien and strange. He had never seen anything like them in all his years of service. Katie reported that they were receiving a weak signal from somewhere ahead. The transmission was faint and breaking up, but it seemed to be coming from a ship or station that was still partially functional. Jake ordered the Discovery to move toward the signal source while Maya worked to clean up the transmission. As they got closer, Maya managed to decode part of the alien message. The words came through their translation systems in broken pieces, but the meaning was clear. Someone or something was dying and trying to warn anyone who might be listening. The message spoke of harvesters and cycles and the end of all organic life. Jake ordered Alex to prepare the security teams, while Katie got the medical bay ready. If there were survivors, they would need help fast. The Discovery found the source of the transmission, drifting near a shattered moon. It was a ship unlike anything they had ever seen before, with curved lines and crystalline structures that seemed to glow with their own light. The alien vessel was dying. Power was failing throughout its systems and atmosphere was leaking into space through dozens of hull breaches. Maya detected one life sign aboard the ship, but it was fading fast. Jake made the decision to dock with the alien vessel and try to save whoever was still alive. Alex led a boarding party through the damaged corridors of the alien ship. The walls were covered with symbols that meant nothing to human eyes, and the air tasted strange even through their environmental suits. They found the survivor in what looked like a command center surrounded by displays showing star charts and weapon deployments. The alien was tall and thin with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. It wore robes that seemed to shift color in the light, and when it spoke, the words came out as musical tones that their translation systems had to work hard to understand. The being said its name was Veltar, and it belonged to something called the Zephyrian Collective. Veltar was dying from radiation poisoning and internal injuries, but it fought to stay conscious long enough to deliver its warning. The Harvesters had come again just as they had 50,000 years ago. They were ancient machines that woke up when organic civilizations became too advanced. Their purpose was to cleanse the galaxy of all life and reset the cycle of evolution. Maya recorded everything Veltar said while the medical team tried to keep the alien alive. Veltar told them the Harvesters had already destroyed dozens of star systems and were moving toward the core worlds where billions of sentient beings lived. The Zephyrian fleet had tried to stop them, but their weapons were useless against the Harvester technology. The alien's breathing became more labored as it struggled to share its final warning. The Harvesters would not stop until every planet was dead and every species extinct. They had done this before, and they would do it again unless someone found a way to break the cycle. Veltar pressed a data crystal into Maya's hands and told her it contained everything the Zephyrians had learned about the Harvesters. Veltar died as the Discovery's medical team tried to save its life. Jake stood over the alien's body, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. They had come out here looking for new worlds and new life, but instead they had found evidence of genocide on a galactic scale. Katie's voice came over the comm system with urgent news. Her sensors were detecting multiple contacts approaching their position fast. The ships were large and moving in formation with energy signatures that matched the weapon traces they had found on the dead planets. The harvesters had found them. Jake ordered immediate departure while Alex prepped the Discovery's weapons. The ship undocked from the alien vessel and began moving away at maximum speed. Behind them, the harvester ships arrived and destroyed what remained of Veltar's vessel, with beams of energy that completely disintegrated the hull. The Discovery ran hard toward the edge of the system, while the harvester ships pursued them. Katie pushed the engines beyond their safety limits while Maya analyzed the data crystal Veltar had given them. The information was terrifying, and confirmed everything the dying alien had told them about the harvesters and their endless cycle of destruction. Alex fired the Discovery's weapons at their pursuers, but the beams had no effect on the harvester ships. Their hulls seemed to absorb energy weapons and their shields deflected physical projectiles. The chase continued for hours as the Discovery fled toward the jump point that would take them back to human space. Katie made a desperate decision as the harvesters closed the distance between them. She overloaded the ship's main reactor, creating a massive explosion that damaged several of the pursuing vessels. The blast gave the Discovery the time it needed to reach the jump point. But Katie was killed in the engine room when the overload sent feedback through the ship's power systems. Jake felt Katie's loss like a physical blow as the Discovery jumped back toward Earth. They had escaped the harvesters, but at a terrible cost and with knowledge that would change everything. Humanity was about to learn that they were not alone in the galaxy, and that something was coming that could destroy every living thing in existence. 5 years had passed since the virus destroyed the Harvester network, and Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of Guardian Station watching ships from a dozen different species working together to build the galaxy's new defense system. The rage that had once driven humanity to desperate measures had evolved into something more sustainable but no less determined. They had become the guardians that the galaxy needed. Dr. Maya Rodriguez walked through her new laboratory where human and alien scientists worked side by side studying consciousness patterns and emotional energy manipulation. The research that had begun as a weapon against the harvesters had become the foundation for technologies that benefited every species in the galaxy. Maya had been promoted to Director of Consciousness Research, and her work was helping other civilizations develop their own emotional capabilities. The Zephyrian survivors had been among the first to approach humanity after the harvester defeat. Their crystalline minds could not generate emotions the way humans did, but they could learn to amplify and focus the feelings they experienced. A young Zephyrian named Cathara worked with Maya's team studying how different species could develop rage-based technologies suited to their unique psychology. Engineer Tim Rodriguez had become the chief designer of the new Guardian fleet. His grief over his family's loss had transformed into a dedication to ensuring that no other species would suffer the way humanity had. The ships he designed were not just weapons, but mobile research stations that could adapt their technology to work with any alien crew that needed to defend their worlds. Captain Lucy Evans commanded one of the new Guardian squadrons that patrolled the outer rim of known space, watching for any signs of harvester activity or other threats to galactic civilization. Her ships were crewed by volunteers from multiple species who had learned to channel their emotions into enhanced performance. The old barriers between different forms of life were breaking down as everyone worked toward the common goal of protection. The transformation in humanity was remarkable and permanent. People who had fought in the Harvester War retained their enhanced emotional capabilities but learned to use them for construction rather than destruction. Children born after the war showed natural abilities to interface with consciousness-based technology in ways their parents had to learn through trauma and loss. Dr. Elena Vasquez had established training centers throughout human space where people learned to channel their emotions productively. The techniques that had been developed for war were being adapted for medicine, engineering, agriculture, and art. Humanity was discovering that their capacity for feeling could enhance every aspect of their civilization. The Ashani were a gaseous species that existed as collective consciousness distributed through planetary atmospheres. They had nearly been extinct when the harvesters attacked their worlds, but the survivors learned to use human emotional techniques to rebuild their dispersed minds. The partnership between human and Ashani researchers led to breakthroughs in group consciousness technology. Commander Ryan Mitchell led the Tactical Development Division that studied potential threats to galactic security. The harvesters had been defeated, but there were other dangers in the deep space regions beyond known civilization. Ryan's teams developed strategies based on human psychological advantages that could be adapted to fight any enemy that might threaten organic life. The Nulari were energy beings that lived in the void between stars. They had survived the harvester cycle by hiding in regions where no organic life could exist, but they emerged after humanity's victory to share their knowledge of deep space phenomena. Their partnership with human engineers led to the development of sensors that could detect threats from anywhere in the galaxy. Jake stood in the command center of Guardian Station, coordinating the defense networks that now protected hundreds of star systems. The station itself was a marvel of multi-species cooperation, built using human consciousness technology, enhanced by alien scientific knowledge. It served as both a fortress and a research center, where the galaxy's best minds worked to prevent future catastrophes. Maya's research had revealed that the 50,000-year cycle was not unique to the harvesters. The galaxy had experienced similar threats throughout its history, but no previous civilization had developed the psychological tools needed to break the pattern. Humanity's gift was not just their ability to feel emotions, but their capacity to transform those feelings into technological capabilities. The children playing in the station's recreational areas represented hope for the galaxy's future. Human children learned alongside young Zephyrians, Ashani, and Nulari in educational programs that taught emotional development as a core skill. They were growing up in a galaxy where the barriers between species were dissolving as everyone learned to work together. Dr. Angela Foster continued her research into empathy-based technologies but focused on healing rather than warfare. Her new devices could help trauma victims process emotional damage by allowing them to share their experiences with trained counselors in ways that promoted understanding and recovery. The weapons of war were becoming tools of peace. Engineer Danny Walsh had established manufacturing centers that produced consciousness-enhanced equipment for any species that requested it. The technology was freely shared because humanity had learned that their own security depended on the strength of all galactic civilizations. No one would face extinction alone as long as the Guardian network existed. The harvester remnants had been hunted down and destroyed, or converted into useful technology. Some of the alien machines had been reprogrammed to serve as automated construction workers, while others became research subjects that helped scientists understand the relationship between consciousness and artificial intelligence. The galaxy's greatest threat had become a source of knowledge and tools. Tim Rodriguez's latest designs included ships that could adapt their capabilities based on the emotional state of mixed-species crews. A human pilot's determination could enhance the engines, while a Zephyrian navigator's analytical mind could improve the sensors, and an Ashani communications officer's collective awareness could coordinate complex fleet maneuvers. The Guardian Academy trained officers from every species in the techniques that humanity had developed during the war. The curriculum included emotional development, consciousness technology operation, and multi-species cooperation. Graduates became the leaders of the new galactic civilization that was emerging from the ashes of the harvester cycle. Jake received regular reports from exploration teams that were mapping the regions of space where harvester-destroyed civilizations had once existed. Many of those worlds were being resettled by refugee populations working together to rebuild what had been lost. The galaxy was healing from wounds that had seemed permanent. Maya published her final research paper on the consciousness revolution that humanity had triggered. The document became required reading in educational institutions throughout known space as the foundation text for understanding how emotions could be integrated with technology to create capabilities that exceeded the sum of their parts. The observation deck where Jake stood had become a place of pilgrimage for beings from across the galaxy who wanted to see where humanity's transformation had begun. The view showed dozens of star systems where human and alien colonies worked together to build something better than anything that had existed before the Harvester War. The rage that had awakened humanity to their true potential had not disappeared but had evolved into a protective instinct that extended to all organic life. They had become the galaxy's immune system, designed to respond quickly and decisively to any threat that might endanger the civilizations they had sworn to protect. Children who had never known war played games that taught them to channel their emotions into constructive activities. They learned that feelings were not weaknesses to be controlled, but sources of strength that could be developed and refined. The next generation would be even more capable than their parents. The Guardian network now extended throughout the galaxy with stations and patrol fleets monitoring space for any signs of danger. The system was powered by volunteers from every species who had learned that their combined emotional energy could create defensive capabilities that no individual civilization could achieve alone. Jake smiled as he watched the children play, knowing that the galaxy they would inherit was safer than it had been for 50,000 years. Humanity's rage had awakened them to possibilities they had never imagined, and in doing so, had awakened the entire galaxy to a future where cooperation and emotional strength could overcome any challenge that the universe might present. Admiral Lisa Chen stood on the command deck of the UES Vengeance watching the tactical displays as Operation Thunderbolt began. The human fleet had grown to over 200 ships, all equipped with rage-based technology and crewed by people who had lost everything to the Harvesters. This was humanity's first major offensive against the alien machines, and everyone knew that failure would mean the end of their species. Captain Jake Morrison felt the ship's systems responding to his emotional state as he guided the Vengeance through the opening moves of the attack. The vessel had become an extension of his will, powered by his determination to make the Harvesters pay for every human life they had taken. Around him, his crew worked with the focused intensity that came from channeling grief into purposeful action. The Harvester fleet they were attacking controlled a key star system that contained manufacturing facilities for the alien war machines. Intelligence gathered from previous raids suggested that the facilities produced new Harvester ships using automated systems that had been running without interruption for thousands of years. Destroying them would slow the alien advance and give humanity time to develop better weapons. Engineer Tim Rodriguez monitored the ship's rage field generators as they approached the enemy formation. The technology that had seemed impossible just months ago was now standard equipment on all human warships. The generators converted the crew's emotional energy into protective barriers that could absorb Harvester weapons fire and redirect it back at the attackers. Captain Lucy Evans led the first wave of attack ships in a high-speed assault on the Harvester perimeter defenses. Her squadron had become legendary for their ability to appear out of nowhere and destroy alien ships before disappearing back into space. The Harvesters had tried to adapt their tactics to counter such attacks, but human unpredictability kept them constantly off balance. The battle began when Lucy's ships opened fire with quantum tunneling weapons developed by Danny Walsh. The new technology allowed human weapons to bypass Harvester shields entirely by existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The alien machines had no defense against weapons that could strike from angles that did not exist in normal space. Commander Ryan Mitchell commanded the second wave, which used consciousness-linked targeting systems that allowed human gunners to hit targets by feeling where they needed to shoot rather than calculating firing solutions. The Harvester ships found themselves under attack from weapons that seemed to predict their movements before they made them. Dr. Angela Foster's empathy bombs proved devastatingly effective against the Harvester fleet. When the weapons exploded near alien ships, they forced the machines to experience the emotional trauma of every human they had killed. The Harvesters' logical programming could not process such input, and many ships simply shut down rather than continue fighting. The Harvester response was swift and brutal. Their ships began targeting human vessels with energy weapons that could disintegrate matter at the molecular level, but the rage-enhanced shields held against attacks that should have destroyed the human fleet instantly. The crew's determination to survive turned their defensive systems into barriers that became stronger under fire. Jake pushed the Vengeance deep into the enemy formation, using maneuvers that defied tactical doctrine. The ship's systems responded to his emotional commands by providing capabilities that exceeded their design specifications. When he felt the need for more speed, the engines produced additional power, and when he needed better maneuverability, the ship seemed to bend space around itself. Dr. Maya Rodriguez worked from the ship's laboratory analyzing Harvester communication patterns and discovering that the alien machines were becoming confused by human tactics. Their programming had no protocols for dealing with enemies who made decisions based on intuition rather than logic. The Harvesters were trying to adapt, but their changes were too slow to keep up with human innovation. The tide of battle turned when Tim Rodriguez discovered that he could use his grief over his family's death to enhance the ship's weapons beyond their normal limits. His emotional energy flowed through the Vengeance's systems, turning every weapon into a tool of focused vengeance. The Harvesters found themselves facing firepower that increased in intensity the longer the battle continued. Captain Sarah Kim led a group of pilots in direct assaults on Harvester command ships using fighters that responded to their emotional state. The small craft became faster and more agile when their pilots felt determined, and nearly impossible to hit when the crew was angry. The Harvester point defenses could not track targets that moved based on human feelings rather than mathematical trajectories. The breakthrough came when Jake realized that the Harvester's greatest strength was also their weakness. The alien machines coordinated their actions through a network that relied on logical communication protocols, but human consciousness could interface with that network if channeled through rage-based technology in ways the designers had never intended. Maya developed a virus based on human consciousness patterns that could be transmitted through the Harvester communication network. The virus was not a conventional computer program, but a digital representation of human emotional responses that would overload any logical system trying to process it. The key was that it could only be delivered by someone whose rage was focused enough to maintain coherent thought patterns under extreme stress. Jake volunteered to deliver the virus by making direct contact with the Harvester command network. The mission required him to pilot the Vengeance into the heart of the enemy formation and establish a connection with their central control system. It was essentially a suicide mission, but Jake's anger over Katie's death and the destruction of human colonies gave him the focus he needed. The Vengeance fought its way through waves of Harvester defenders while Jake prepared for the final assault. His crew channeled their combined rage into the ship's systems, creating an energy field so intense that it began affecting nearby Harvester vessels. The alien machines found their own systems becoming unstable as human emotions interfered with their logical programming. Tim Rodriguez pushed the ship's engines beyond their breaking point to give Jake the speed he needed for the final approach. The young engineer's grief over his lost family became a source of power that turned the Vengeance into something more than just a warship. It became a weapon forged from human determination and tempered by loss. The connection with the Harvester network lasted only seconds, but it was enough. Maya's virus flooded through the alien communication system, carrying the chaotic patterns of human consciousness into machines that had never experienced emotion. The Harvesters' logical minds could not comprehend feelings like love, anger, hope, and desperation. The virus spread through the Harvester fleet like wildfire, causing ships to shut down or begin attacking each other as their programming became corrupted by human emotional patterns. The alien machines that had dominated the galaxy for 50,000 years found themselves paralyzed by their first encounter with truly irrational behavior. Jake survived the virus transmission, but the effort left him changed. The connection with the Harvester network had shown him the scope of their galactic genocide and the countless civilizations they had destroyed. His rage evolved into something deeper and more focused as he realized that humanity had become the galaxy's only hope for breaking the cycle. The battle of the manufacturing system ended in complete human victory. The Harvester facilities were destroyed, and their fleet was scattered. More importantly, the virus had demonstrated that human consciousness could be weaponized against any logical system. The Harvesters were no longer invincible. Admiral Chen received reports from across human space showing that Harvester fleets everywhere were experiencing system failures and communication breakdowns. The virus was spreading through their network faster than they could contain it. For the first time in the war, humanity was winning battles they had not even started. The victory came at a cost. Many human crews found that their exposure to rage-based technology was changing them in ways that could not be reversed. They were becoming something new, while still remaining human. The species was evolving in response to the threat, but no one knew what they would become when the transformation was complete. Lucy Evans led the pursuit of retreating Harvester ships, while Ryan Mitchell began planning follow-up attacks on alien strongholds throughout the galaxy. The war was far from over, but humanity had proven that the Harvesters could be defeated. The ancient machines that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia had finally met an enemy they could not understand or overcome. The galaxy's surviving alien species watched in amazement as humans did what no previous civilization had accomplished. They were not just surviving the harvester cycle, but actively hunting down the machines that had destroyed their worlds. Humanity had become something that the galaxy had never seen before, and the harvesters were learning to fear them.